is the biggest refugee camp in Gaza, where some 1.6 million people have been displaced by more than 6 weeks of fighting between Israel and Hamas. Israeli families continue to mount pressure on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for the release of hostages currently under Hamas's captivity. Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid said that the nation's top priority is to bring back all the hostages who are in Hamas's captivity. And thousands of marchers, including relatives of more than 50 hostages held by Hamas, reached Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office on Saturday. On Friday, they embarked on their fourth leg of a 5-day walk from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and called on the Israeli government to bring some 240 hostages home. The marchers traversed 70 kilometers to Netanyahu's office and urged Israel's war cabinet to do more to rescue their loved ones. Tens of thousands of protesters have demonstrated against the Israeli bombardment of the Gaza Strip in Yemen's capital, Sana'a, and in a show of solidarity with Palestinians in the enclave, Israeli airstrikes on residential blocks in South Gaza has killed at least 47 Palestinians. Israel has vowed to annihilate the Hamas militant group that controls the tiny coastal enclave after its October 7th attack on Israel. Now, since then, Israel has bombed to rubble much of the Gaza city and ordered the depopulation of the northern half of the narrow strip. Now, more than 2.3 million people have been displaced. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has sanctioned 37 Russian groups and more than 100 people, including a former prime minister and a former education minister. In a nightly video address, President Zelensky said that the list of included people involved in abduction and deportation of Ukrainian children, quote unquote, individuals that help Russian terror against Ukraine. Now, some of the newly sanctioned people, which included many with Russian citizenship, had previously been punished with separate or similar penalties. According to the authorities, about 20,000 children have been moved to Russia or Russian-held territory without the consent of families or guardians. And this amounts to a war crime that meets the UN treaty definition of genocide. President Joe Biden said that the U.S. is prepared to impose sanctions on Israeli settlers who are involved in attacks against Palestinians in the West Bank. Now, this is the first time the U.S. has publicly said that it was considering individual sanctions against Israeli settlers. It also signals that the Biden administration is concerned that the Israeli government may not seriously be attempting to stop and prevent violence. In a newspaper article, President Biden said that those committing violence against Palestinians in West Bank must be held accountable. Biden also suggested issuing visa bans against extremists who attack civilians in the West Bank. The U.S. State Department has approved the sale of Tomahawk missiles and related equipment to Japan in a deal valued at $2.35 billion. The Pentagon said that the package would include 400 Tomahawk missiles, 14 tactical Tomahawk weapon control systems, software, and support equipment. The Pentagon also said that Raytheon is the principal contractor for the weapons. The deal comes after U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese leader Xi Jinping agreed to open a presidential hotline, resume military-to-military communications, and work to curb fentanyl production. Philippines President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has said that dispute over the South China Sea should not define bilateral relations with China. The two leaders met on Friday to find a way to diffuse tensions over territorial rights in the busy waterway. Now, there have been many instances where Philippine and Chinese vessels, including Coast Guard ships, have clashed. Beijing claims almost the whole of the South China Sea. China says it is known as the historical 9-dash line, and the Philippines won an arbitrary ruling in 2016 that invalidated Chinese claims to strategic reefs. However, Beijing rejected this outcome. Russia has launched several waves of drone attacks on Kyiv for the second night in a row, stepping up its assaults on the Ukrainian capital. Ukraine's Air Force said that its air defense systems destroyed 15 of 20 Russia-launched kamikaze drones over Kyiv, Poltava and Cherkasy regions. According to Ukraine, there had been no initial reports of critical damage or casualties. A Saudi aid plane is set to depart from Riyadh carrying aid and relief supplies for Gaza, and the aircraft is scheduled to travel to Egypt's airport in North Sinai. Now, according to Saudi Foreign Minister, ministers from Arab and Islamic countries will visit China on Monday and on the first stop of a tour that aims at ending the war in Gaza. Around 170,000 of Spaniards took to the streets of Madrid to denounce a proposed amnesty law for Catalan activists. This comes a few days after Spain's socialist Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez won a 4-year term with the backing of Catalan and Basque nationalist parties in return for agreeing to the law. Now, the protest took place in the heart of the city, where one would usually see a crowd of football fans. The protesters accused newly elected Prime Minister Sanchez of bargaining his place in return for giving his backers undeserved judicial immunity. India and Australia will hold 2+2 dialogue on Monday. Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh and External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar and their Australian counterparts, Richard Marles and Penny Wong, will be holding the talks on 20th and 21st of November. Now, the ministers are expected to discuss a wide range of strategic, defence and security issues, and the Ministry of External Affairs said that the discussions will be covering bilateral, regional and global matters of mutual interest to further advance cooperation under the India-Australia Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. Pakistan's former Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and the two members of the incumbent federal caretaker cabinet have been acquitted in a mega housing corruption scam. Accountability Court in Lahore has acquitted Shehbaz, federal cabinet members Fawad Hassan and Ahad Khan Shima and others in the mega Ashiana-e Bal housing scheme corruption case. Now, the Ashiana case first emerged in January 2018 when National Anti-Graft Body, commonly known as NAB, accused Sharif of misusing his authority to illegally issue orders for cancellation of the contract. Now, this was in regard to the housing project and during his term as Punjab's Chief Minister in 2014. Ozempic, a medicine designed for type 2 diabetes, is running short in Britain and the United States. And not for diabetes, but because it has been trending as an effective drug that helps in losing weight. In July this year, the British government declared a shortage of semaglutide and intervened to prevent Ozempic reaching people who want to lose weight. Diabetes patients who are well off are ready to pay a hefty amount in order to buy the drug, while diabetics who depend on the National Health Service struggle to get government-paid prescriptions. According to medical professionals, diabetic patients unable to access Ozempic are suffering from erratic blood glucose levels, risking seizures and coma. Japanese Marines in assault vehicle stormed an island beach at the edge of the East China Sea, and Ground Self-Defense Force amphibious assault vehicles launched from two Maritime Self-Defense Force landing ships anchored offshore, landing on the southwestern island. And this was a simulated attack to dislodge invaders from a territory that Tokyo worries is vulnerable to attack from China. Ski resorts in China are packed with snow and ice lovers as northern China receives snowfall early this season, and the resort owners and operators in the province say that the visitors' footfall has been increasing and is likely to increase this year if the weather holds. Known as North Pole of China, in Northeast has received a footfall of 3,500 winter sports lovers since the month of November. The number is 2.5 times than the pre-pandemic levels. And in the provinces of Jilin and Liaoning, ski resorts have undertaken major renovations to expand their ski areas in order to welcome increasing numbers of visitors and winter sports lovers. Now, in a shocking turn of events, a woman lost her life ahead of Taylor Swift's Eras Tour concert in Rio de Janeiro, and a 23-year-old Brazilian fan of the US singer died on Friday night after falling ill at the sweltering concert venue. The concert goer, identified as Ana Clara, she started feeling unwell at the stadium. An event organizer wrote on Instagram that she was provided immediate medical help and taken to a medical station set up at the concert venue, and she was then transferred to the hospital where she passed away. Now, the exact cause of her death is not yet known, and after the mishap, the government ordered for drinking water to be provided and made easily accessible at shows. Wildfires in the Bolivian Amazon have reached nature reserves, indigenous communities, and killed dozens of animals. According to the reports, fauna such as deer, rodents, and various species of birds died from carbon monoxide intoxication. And in the village of Piposi, firefighters and volunteers are fighting the flames with water hoses and plastic buckets. However, the drought of the last few months has reduced the river's water supply, which is interfering with firefighting efforts. According to the latest report from the Bolivian Environment Ministry, over 96,000 fire outbreaks were detected in November. Meanwhile, activists have gathered to demand measures to tackle fires. The International Balloon Festival, which features 200 balloons from 23 countries, is being hosted by a Mexican state. Every year, the international festival attracts national and international tourists, and this event is held this year between November 17th and November 20th. In a big boost to India's ambitions to be a tech manufacturing hub, the Narendra Modi government has allowed 27 companies to manufacture tech hardware in the country. And this decision, taken under a $2 billion incentive scheme, will help companies like Dell, HP and Foxconn. India's union minister also said that these companies are expected to invest about $360 million and create 50,000 jobs. Approvals have also been granted to domestic manufacturers like Dixon Technologies and VVDN. The Indian government has doubled the value of this incentive scheme to spur domestic production of laptops and tablets after a lukewarm response to a previous program. Now the country is offering cashbacks to manufacturers on sales of locally made goods that exceed an annual target. Meanwhile, SpaceX's uphill trek to the stars continue with a minor setback on Saturday after the company's ambitious Starship lost its core booster functionality mere minutes into the takeoff. Now, this marks the second unsuccessful test flight for the Starship, with the previous one earlier in April this year. The two-stage craft took off from SpaceX's launch site in Texas. 8 minutes into the mission, however, a camera aboard the ship facing the core booster recorded an explosion that took place. And this coincides with the time Mission Control lost contact with the Starship at an altitude of 148 kilometers on its planned 90-minute trajectory.
Incredible views of our Super Heavy booster. And as you can see, the Super Heavy booster has just experienced a rapid, unscheduled disassembly.